Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne. And disembodied brain Justin. I think he's still out there somewhere. Somewhere there's a Justin. But yeah, yo. And John's out there, of course. John's always lurking out there. John is that guy who's always hiding in your, digital shrubbery. Sorry, John. Oh, Vakaroha, thank you for the raid. It's a little raid. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We just started. I am Anne. For those, if any of you don't know me, I work for Reaper, and this is my morning show. Morning for me on the West Coast. It's morning-ish still for the central USA. And you guys on the East Coast are just going, eh? And not to mention all of you in Europe. Going, morning, not. Hello, everybody. You're just all little peoples. I'm so cute. Oh, dear. It is one of those, I think it's one of those days, one of those weeks. It's been one of those months. But it's okay. I did a lot of work on my Sky Earth NMM tutorial for my Patreon yesterday. I'm looking forward to it. I have to do a lot of painting now. A lot of examples. That's the next task, which is the fun part, right? Like rating it is kind of a slog. But then you have to put your examples together, and that's more fun because you actually get to paint. And hopefully you don't totally do it wrong. Benevolent digital overlord, yes. Oh no, not the cat vomit. That's just the ice cream. That's the cherry on top of the crap sundae, right, Inara? That's when it was like with me it was more dog vomit, or dog poop. That was, just the cherry on top of my day. But to each their own furry denizen of evil. Hey, Cookie. Gagarin Day? What is a Gagarin? Inara, elucidate us. Inform us of what this is. Unless it's a made-up thing. Well, and then you especially have to inform us of what it is. I guess every National Blah Day is indeed a made-up thing. But some are more made up than others. Alrighty. Hi, Monique. Hello, Monique. So I'm pretty... Yeah, her face needs to get, blended. It's not blended. First man in space. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Cranston and Shadow Raven. Yeah, I did not log into my Google this morning, so I did not see anything. Usually they've got a little, a little key of whose day it is. Yeah, thanks. First human being in space. If you count animals as people beat him. Technically. All right. I want to do red today. We're red. Red. I am terrible with names, including historical names, so... don't expect me to know, okay, I'll remember your actual handle from chat. But if you expect me to remember your real name in person, good luck. And David is just as bad, so he can't help me. Unfortunately, this is our mass weakness. As a couple, I'm sure every couple has one or two of these. The thing that the other person actually doesn't cover you on, where you both have the same issue. And for us, it's names. So we're like, oh yeah, so-and-so, I remember you. I remember your face. I have no idea what your name is. Please remind me. All right, where's my Asmodeus Red? Dang it. We're going to start with it. No, not Urgathoa. We don't want purple. No, not dragon. Did I slide it over here? I must have. No. Uh-ohs. Oh, no. It's got to be hiding here, and I've just lost it temporarily. There it is. There it is. Such a pretty red. Pretty red. Now... Normally, if I was doing a big Monique, if I was doing the big 54mm Monique, or any vampire that is at a larger scale, or a demon that I wanted red armor on, I would actually start darker than this. But because we have so little room, we're going to have to rely on lining for our shadows. We can't have quite the range that I would normally have, because we don't have any room on a chibi. So, just mental note. Oh no, Crimson Cupcake. Yeah, that's bad when your animal eats something red and then goes, hee. Mom just panicked and it's really not a problem. They laugh until they go to the vet. And then they're like, no. no, the joke has gone bad. But yeah, so we're going to start with Asmodeus. At that point, you're more worried about what was in the cupcake, because if it's red velvet, it has cocoa in it, and that can be bad for animals, but you know. All right, so let's do over here. So I won't be able to do my quite as crazy red, and actually I don't think I've painted something with a lot of, like, I painted the fire giant, but he had a lot of orange in him, and his reds weren't done to the full nines because he was so huge. So maybe I should pick out something coming up that we're going to do some really dark wicked red on that has a lot of cloth that I want to do red. Because I used to be kind of known for this, but I used to do a pretty crazy red that had a lot of different transitions. This was back in the long ago days when I was painting a lot of Games Workshop, like Blood Angels and Blood Dragon Vampires. All right, so let's see. I just got to look at her. And I've got to kind of decide, hold on, I see a tiny mold line that I missed. I want to make sure I'm inspecting the armor for any extra mold lines before I start coloring stuff in. Because we all know how we miss those mold lines. Do not miss your mold lines, everybody. Hey, and the same thing that applies to your brush, where you need to take it from a comfortable position, applies to using your knife on mold lines. Maybe even more so, because if the knife slips, it isn't just the paint job that suffers. There, that's better. Let's see, let me just glance over the rest of her greaves and everything else. She has a bit of a line around down here. But that's right at the edge where her armor kind of changes direction, so it's not as big of a problem. This side is a little bit more of a problem. So just go over... Although this side, there's no texture underneath this edge, so I probably could just paint it as boot and be fine. Like greaves over the top of a boot. And then I've got a little bit of her cloth in the back. Now, on the cloth in the back, we're kind of in trouble because the hair is black. But to put red back here would be a lot of red. I don't know. I might have to switch it out and do... I guess we'll have a red shield back here. Oop, gouged the hair. Oh well. Paint over it. When it's just a base coat, we don't care. I'd rather get this mold line off and not worry about gouging the hair. But this is my problem for not checking earlier on the mold line front, because now I'm in danger of damaging paint. But as most of it is just base coat, it's not a big deal. I'm pretty fearless about this stuff. You can always paint it over, especially with bones. Hey, Pendrake, thanks for the resub. 13 months. It's the anniversary of the first human in space. Yeah, she's very small. I mean, her body is very small. Oh yeah, fondant. That's not, yeah, sugar is not good for animals either. It's very, very addictive for them. I mean, it's very, very addictive for us too. That's why we all have, weight issues, right? But, yeah, animals are really not equipped, especially not cats, who are pure carnivores. They are not equipped to deal with carbs very well. All right, yeah, it's annoying me. This mold line, it's annoying me very muchly. Sometimes this happens. There we go. Where you get those little particles of plastic, and you're just like, grrr, no. And you just have to keep kind of getting at them until you get them away. I'm going to try something. I have a fine diamond file, and although normally I do not say that files work very well on bones, this probably will be better than the knife at this point, because I can get it down in there. Yeah, it's not bad. So to clean up those little particles, this is a finer, smaller diamond file. It's a round. So it's letting me kind of buff out the little particulate remnants of this mold line. Normally, I'm not a big fan of files on bones, but sometimes when you have to like get down in here and your knife just doesn't have a good angle, you can just kind of rub at it with your knife or with your file and take it down. Just enough. I don't think it's ideal still, because the bone's plastic, even the bone's black plastic, is still a little bit gummy, I guess I would call it. So the file tends not to be great as far as leaving a texture. But, yeah, who knows? They may have migrated to, they may have found a warmer spot too, Pendrick. You never know. Alright, I think we're good. I think we got all of that mold lineage more or less taken care of before we start putting paint on this area. She has a little belt pouch. There we go. That looks good. That's pretty good. I still see little traces of mold line. Mostly at the bottom of the skirt here. I mean, Reaper does a really good job of kind of burying its mold lines. On the edges and downsides of things, but sometimes you still don't want it. Yeah. And sometimes you have to fight with it. Like I said, the file is helping me fight with it pretty well, actually. It's nice that it has that needle little point that's really fine. You can kind of jam into smaller areas. So tomorrow we're starting a Wyvern Day, guys. I hope you're excited. That's good, Cranston. Yeah, I've just never, I've never liked the effect of files on bones. I've never liked the kind of the grit that they leave, generally. But down here on the bottom of things, I'm okay with it. That, though, I keep in mind, I am a person who has historically disliked files in general. On almost everything. I use them now when they're suited for it, but so many. I had crappy files when I was younger, and I got prejudiced against them. So diamond files are the only file I'll use at this point. But yeah, so pick up a set of diamond files. I have big ones and small ones, depending on how badly I want to smack the surface that I'm dealing with. I do not... David uses them. I've never found them necessary, Pendrake. In most models, a fine enough diamond file should be better. I mean, should be just as good. I mean, sanding sticks if you're putting putty on and you want to, like, smooth it down, I guess? I don't know. I've never even owned them. Like, I have one. I don't remember what I last used it on. Like, it may have been actually a piece of wood and not even a miniature. But I find that their shape, unless it's a larger figure, the shape can be awkward. But many people like to use them for green stuff. To take down cured green. So, you know. I just don't. I use a knife, I use a file, I'm done. Mostly. Or I use green stuff, as you guys will find out on the Lizette, because she's got that mold line in the interior of her cloth. And that's something that you're not going to be able to get a file angled well onto, or a knife. So at that point, we just fill it in with green. So we've got some green stuff coming up. But at any rate, that's just me. I mean, my personal prejudice. And people have yelled at me about it before. So I'm like, meh, it's me. It's the way I choose to do things. You may not like it, but then it's not your mini. Yeah, whatever works. In our, it was my crazy vampire skin tone recipe. So my crazy vampire skin tone recipe is a shadow of Drownable Pink. The base coat is Rainy Gray 9038. The first highlight is equivalent to Pale Olive. I actually just mixed white with Troll Flesh because I could, or Troll Hide. But Pale Olive is usually my go-to for that, which is 9036, I believe. And then I go up with a rosier skin tones. I started with Pale Flesh from Bones, but then I decided I wanted a little bit more rosy for my highlights, so I mixed some rosy skin into that to get a pinkier. What I want is a kind of a pearl look, so I want the pink and the green playing together. And then I decided, actually, the purple is a new addition. I decided I wanted a shadow there. David yelled at me about something that I needed to change. Oh yeah, he felt that I needed to get rid of that shadow. It was bugging him, even though I saw it on the model. So, maybe I'll do that. Hello, Trouble. Ah, Socrates, 11 months. You almost have a subiversary. You almost have to sing the song. That's awesome. Thank you so much for supporting us. All right, Asmodeus, do I need to run you a little thicker? Have I thinned you too much? Have I thinned too much? This is the question. But yeah, whatever you want to use to take down mold lines, it's all up to you. Everybody's got their own particular thing that they really like and swear by. And the answer is there are many ways to get to the same place. I just got in the bad habit of using a knife for a lot of things when I was younger, and I have maintained that bad habit. Because I get very impatient with cleaning. This is one of my weaknesses as a painter. Very impatient with cleaning. So much so that I'm just like, just charge ahead, and if I miss a mold line, screw it, I'm just gonna gouge it out and paint over it. Although I'm a little bit more cautious with like resin busts, I tend to actually take a little more time. But then again, those are expensive. And so it's like, I'm more likely to spend time painstakingly cleaning a really nice resin model, much more likely, than I am to spend time painstakingly cleaning a Bones USA model. Or a Bones Black, or a Bones, etc. The more I pay for it, the more care I take in making sure that the first paint is perfect. All right, so we've got little gold skulls here, and then we've got pretty much leg armor plates going all the way down, as I recall. Though she's got some boot behind here, I think. But I might just go all red with it, because then her black cloth is going to kick in. And I want contrast, and I didn't get all that mold line there. Well, Drown Imple's a good shadow even if you're using just Vampiric Skin Triad from MSP. This is my particular vampire skin, my specialty recipe that I developed, 2 decades ago, because I wanted something that looked dead. I don't like my vampires to look pink. I don't like them to look, dead white either, because that's no fun. And gray and white just seemed really weird and didn't look right to me. So I just played around with stuff and got the idea of using kind of a green, which is more zombie, and a really pale pink, which was often used on vampires, and mixing those together and then shading it more purple or gray. And I liked the effects so much that it has stuck as my vampire skin tone for 2 decades. So you say that, Harumph, but the thing is, remember that, for the first, 10 years of Master Series, muted colors like Drown Nipple Pink were the worst sellers. If we had actually put it out in the core range, I have faith that it would have been canceled by now, except for its jokey name. Its jokey name may have kept it afloat, but maybe not. But people are terrible about knowing how to use muted colors. They always reach for the brighter color. They never reach for the muted color because they don't know what goes with it. So Drown Nipple Pink has gotten legendary status because of its urban legend status. But in reality, I am very much convinced that if I had put out a color like this without the jokey name earlier in the series, it would have gotten canceled. I would bet you money on it. Oh, I don't think so, Rex. I mean, you can see the highlights and shadows. You guys also aren't seeing the best picture. I'm trying to make it, this is a really hard skin tone to make, to convey on camera because of the complementary color highlights. Whenever I do subtle pastel stuff, I notice that cameras still are not good enough to capture it. So if you saw this in person, you'd get a lot more colors because there's parts here that look white really aren't white. They're like a rosy skin color, and you get more of the green and stuff like that. You'd be able to definitely tell that the face was painted. Oh, I think it's always going to suffer, actually, Rex. Like I said, subtle hues, subtle pastel hues that are really light, the camera just doesn't capture. Like, if I keep this model and bring it to ReaperCon, you guys will be like, whoa, she looks so different in person. And that's just one thing that cameras just haven't gotten better at. Yeah, especially if I move the white palette out. If I move this in, you can see a little bit more of the variance. Yeah, I mean, they put up tickets the other day, Rex. It's on. I think they announced that like about a month ago, because we all got the hotel room block is up and everything. Yeah, the camera just will wash out the tones. Like, you put all this work into the subtle paint, right, Harumph? And then it just washes it out. And it's just not... Yeah, most of the ones you love are now OOP. Exactly, Crows, right? Because people don't know how to use them. I mean, really, you just use them as the color they are and just modify your other colors to be a little more muted, but people get scared. All right, let's start with this Asmodeus and start actually painting in some red on this. Let's see if my paint is the right consistency. I really love Asmodeus red. I tended to take my, the shadows of my red triads. Oh, yeah, it's beating just a little bit there. I did wash her, but I think my Asmodeus had a little bit too much binder in the first drop. 1,000 ticket limit for the ReaperCon. Yep. I don't think we're even going to get close to that. I think people are going to be cautious and good for you, really, if you are. I mean, David and I are kind of holding out to see, one, if we get vaccinated in time, and two, you know, what the state of the nation is at that point. But wrong continent. Yeah, well, we get people from coming over from Europe and such, Lord nobody, but it does make it a very expensive trip. Like, it's usually best to combine it with other travel in America. Like, combine it with, like, going out to see some other sites in other parts of America. Because it is a lot of money to come over for a convention. Yeah, see, I'm getting a little bit of paint resistance. And I don't often get this. I don't often get the beating up. But the answer at that point is just to put it on a little more thickly. And to make sure that your paint is quite thick. I did add water to this one, so I'll add another drop of red. It's probably about 7-to-1 paint to water at this point. So still, I like a little bit of water still, even if the paint is wanting to bead on me. But I find that just dabbing it on a little bit, yeah, that's true for now. I mean, we don't know what it's going to be like in the fall, right? Right, Inara? That's the thing, is nobody knows. That's why I think we're not even going to get close to 1,000 people. It's because there's still a large uncertainty factor. But anyway, so the key, if you are finding that your paint is beating up, is to just get little dabs of it, little dab, and load it on. Normally, I do not advise you putting paint on more thickly. But if you've thinned it just a little, you should be all right. Like I said, this is about 7-to-1. But the key here is to dab it on, not brush it on. If you brush it on, you're pulling the paint thinly over the surface, and if it's going to want to bead up, it will. Essentially, you're enabling it to bead up a little bit better. Then make sure you let that dry, and then go back over and touch it up a bit. At that point, you've got, like, I had a little bit of paint, pull away down here, but now I've got paint on either side of it, so if I essentially brush over that whole area, I can fill in that little area very easily. Even though the paint pulled away the first time I went over it, now it has paint on either side to cling to, so it works just fine. So I don't really... paint beading doesn't frustrate me. That's the way you deal with it. It's very simple. Just use a little bit heavier paint. Make sure that you don't have it too thinned. You can use it straight out of the bottle if you like, but I like it with just a little bit of water in it, just because it self-levels a little bit better. And you want that if you're putting like dabs of, paint a little bit heavier onto the model than you normally do. Yona Medzik. Yeah, the virtual con was very, I mean, it was close, but it's not the same, right? Lord Nobody, because ReaperCon is like, it's great to have the instructors. As instructors, we do like to be able to give personal feedback, and I find that the online, that format suffers for that. And then of course there's all the time that you can hang out on the tables painting stuff and comparing it with your friends and all the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, I think Reaper said that they're going to do online stuff also this year, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my impression that the online con went over well enough that they're still going to do virtual stuff. So you won't be able to do everything, but you'll be able to do some things. Yeah, this plastic just wants to repel the paint. But that's okay. Just lets me show you guys that it's really no sweat to deal with it. Yo, dog father. Yo, Jelly. There you go. Oh, lots of buffering today? That's a bummer, guys. Sorry, Bob and Julie. So dab, dab, dab. Like I said, just dab it on. And I'm not like putting a huge puddle of it on. I'm just putting it on a little thicker than I normally would. So you can see that the tip of my brush is deformed a little bit with a little puddle of paint on there. And then I'm just going to dab it on here. And when I see it bead up and resist like that, I'm not going to give up on it right away. I'm going to continue to put paint over it, and then I'm going to decide to go and get more if it's really resisting me. There is a point where, and we don't really have the base that had this problem, but in the olden days, there was a point where if you put your paint on too thick, it would crack. And this is a thing with acrylic paints, so be very aware of it. That's why we advise you to thin your paint. It's one of the reasons. So only in times like this do I ever put paint on thicker. And even then, you can see kind of that it's still a little bit thinned, right? You can see that it's kind of falling off the edges and going down into the pooling in the cracks there, right? So this is the only instance that I would use thicker paint for a base coat. It's probably local internet. No, not at all, Val. I haven't had any other... This is a Bones Black for... Or is it? It's just regular Bones, actually. She's regular Bones. Like, Val, one model sample size does not make a generalization. And I'm just showing you how to deal with it. So why would you prime? I mean, unless you've got a primer that you are fully confident in will not react with the Bones material, then go for it. Just like I tell everybody, make your decision based on your own experience. I personally see no reason to prime Bones, even and including if I have a Bones model that has decided it wants to like pull away from the paint a little bit. I just shrug and I put my paint on a little thicker and it's fine. Yeah, Durham, we're doing a little chibi vampire. Yeah, I mean, do it if you want, Durham, but I don't use an airbrush for priming. I've just never, ever... I don't see the point of priming Bones. I mean, think about all the Bones you guys have watched me paint on this stream. This is the single one over the last how many years that I've actually had a paint pulling away problem with. Like, one model. So, am I going to change my entire, like, you know, modus operandi because of one lousy model? No. I think sometimes people overreact. But, I mean, if you want to prime your Bones and you have the primer that works for you, be it Stynylrez or something else, go. Do it. Do it. I don't care. I won't judge you. But don't ask me to prime because I just don't want to. To me, it is unnecessary prep. And I just mentioned how lazy I was about prep, so this should not surprise you. But yeah, this one is definitely having a lot of issue with the paint sticking. As I'm trying to put on my standard coat, and then it's like, nope. And I'm like, all right. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Durham, for me, since I never used the airbrush, it's a waste of time for me. If one of my favorite spray primers was, you know, okay with Bones, I might consider it. But even then, I've gotten into just the habit of never having to prime my bones, and I'm happy with that. Even here, it's not like having to put my paint on a little thicker is really slowing me down that much. Yeah, I mean, and Nara also has a good point. If you're handling the model a lot, you may need to prime or seal. And if I'm doing a model that's getting handled a lot, I will seal it, but I usually won't prime it. I find that the paint does seem to bond very well to the bones, but yeah, I'm doing mostly display paint jobs. Mostly, unless I'm doing a game. Yeah, like if I didn't know I had primed this or I had washed this one, I would wonder if I had like forgotten to wash this one. She is definitely persnickety about the paint sticking. It's also possible that, you know, maybe the bones material has changed slightly, but I doubt that. Ed is very much about just being able to paint them out of the package, so I can't think that we would allow a shift like that. But yes, it always comes down to, you may prime your bones if you wish. I just saw a piece of flash I missed. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is, it's just like, it's your choice. It's your choice. I do find that washing, like, helps with this, but this one, it didn't have didn't help as much as it normally does. Sorry guys, a little bit of flash here that I completely missed. Obviously you can tell I haven't put a ton of time into prepping these. There we go. Much better. We'll take our file and get in there while this stuff dries. But yeah, usually the question I hear is, do you need to prime bones? And this answer is no. Does it hurt the bones if you prime them? Not if you have a primer that doesn't react to the PVC, as pointed out. But you may need to experiment or, you know, ask for opinions before you do that. That's cool. It's all cool. Still can't tell if that's like a clasp or a skull or a whatever, not sure. Sometimes it can get very difficult on chibis to tell what a small piece of detail is because everything below the head is so compressed. In which case you just have to go with your best guess. Yeah, the problem with the AP primer is that otherwise it tends to be crappy. That has been my personal experience. Personal experience only. Take it with a grain of salt. They may, you know, have worked on improving their product. But when my boyfriend looks at me and says, I'm going to go use this primer because I can trust it to be fuzzy and I need texture. That's bad. That's not good. Oh, Lord Dave. Yeah, hi. How dare your job expect you to work? Oh, Belothian, thank you. Ooh, 3 months, sweet. Belothian, it's a chibi. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to chibi to NMM this chibi. It's tiny. I was gonna go with more just my old Crimson Blood Dragon kind of take on things. I may highlight it accordingly, but we won't be able to suggest much other than the shine. Here, there's not a lot of room for complex shadows or anything. Each plate is extremely small. If this was a piece of detail on a large model, I would be doing very curtailed NMM. Like, the smaller the area, the less you can do realistic NMM on it. The more you have to just, like, hit your main points. Highlight, shadow, reflection. Boom, done. And that doesn't, you know... doesn't always, like, go. Often I just like to kind of paint the armor as if it's, like, red. Like a red, not quite an enamel, but you get the idea. Not quite as shiny as metal. As if you could get a dull red finish on armor. Alright, let's see. The problem... okay, so the reason I don't normally paint chibis, and the one thing I hate about them, is the way that the detail all compresses, and you really can't tell what some things are. And then it's like... even with well sculpted chibis, it can be a problem sometimes. Figuring out what's what. Like, are these straps? I think they're straps. So you have to kind of, like, figure it out. Yeah, like anodized red armor. Well, Lothian, essentially the smaller the model, the less you can get away with, like, pseudo realism effects like that. I could probably still do it, but it would look okay. But it would be much more fun to do red NMM on a bigger model. Just going to very carefully get this little shoulder pad painted in. I'm noticing on the upper part of the model, I'm not having any problem with paint sticking to it. It's only on the lower part of the model, by the way. Asmodeus. Pathfinder Val. 89507. It's a lovely, lovely, warm, dark red. Something that isn't like any other red in MSP. It's very unique. I may paint over part of this with black, but again, when it's difficult for me to tell what a surface is, I'm probably going to paint it one color, and then I'll go back and break it up afterwards. No, Shadow Raven. It's impossible for me to miss something when I wash it, because my washing strategy is to dump the bones into a tub of hot soapy water. The hot soapy water is going to get everywhere. So... it may be, who knows, it may be just that the release was a little stronger in one place than another. No idea. Don't really, like... overthinking it does me no good, because there's no way to prove or disprove anything. So I shrug and move on. Shrug and paint on. I find that often in this hobby... often in life, people tend to hyperanalyze things. And often you should question whether that's useful. Because if you have no way of proving one thing or another, I suppose you could do an experiment, but since you aren't working on the same model, you wouldn't necessarily be working with the same issue. So for me, I'm like, well, I can't really prove or disprove any reason for why this might be so I'm just going to work with it and move on. And if it turns into a consistent problem with recent batches of bones as I move forward, then I'll probably email Ed and go, hey, I'm having this issue. There are several good colors in Pathfinder Val. I wouldn't call them necessary colors, but there are several very good colors. Like for me, I've adopted several of them because they're colors that I've wanted for a while. Like the Osirian Sand, which I really like as a warm off-white, kind of pale gold color. Really like the Osirian Sand. And this Asmodeus is different. But this is not a directive to go out and buy all of the Pathfinder paints. You should look at them and ask yourself which ones look most enticing and order those. For me, if I had to pick a Pathfinder MVP lineup, Asmodeus would be on there, as would probably Urgathoa Red. Although, I don't know, Urgathoa it depends on if you like to do dark purpley shadows on your reds. Osirian Sand is, as I mentioned, one of my favorites. The Tianzia Jade I really like, but that, again, that's more of a transparent color, so if you're not into that, then that you may not get as much mileage out of that, but I really like it. I'm trying to think. There's several Pathfinder colors that I have. The Mwangi Brown is a good mid-tone between Ebony Flesh and Ruddy Flesh for the bones dark skin tones if you want to build a triad. There we go. There's some very nice greens. I've used Medusa Green and a couple of the others. Let's see here. Salad spinners. Modern problems need modern solutions. I agree, Dr. Bob. Valandar, honestly, I don't even remember. Like, I did those colors so long ago for the first set. I don't think I did the second set. I think the second set was Sadie. So that'd be a Sadie question. I will say that some of the colors in the first Cav set, which was kickstarted a few years back, were... some of them were similar to canceled colors from the Heavy Gear line. Like, they were changed and tweaked. But there was definitely some inspiration there. Like, where it's like, I like this color, let's, make a better version of it or a different version of it. Not the same formulas, but I think there was, like, kind of a grayed teal that was really pretty in there. I don't even remember the colors because I don't own any of them. The Cav line colors, you always have to look at stuff and remember that with game sets, the colors aren't necessarily full utility because they're made to be a faction color, right? So they may have a limited range or a limited application. Hold on. Got stuff, missing stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, NMM is, Lord Dave has a point. It photos better. But, I mean, the way that I pop my highlights on red, this is going to photo just fine. It would just be very difficult. Like, I could maybe do a little bit of NMM, but like I said, it wouldn't be realistic NMM. Like, it would be very hard to do a realistic NMM on this. I'm sure, especially on the arms. There's just so little space. If I'm going to do colored, in colored NMM, it's just the same darn thing as non-colored NMM. People always think it's different. The only thing different is that you're using reds instead of yellows or grays. You use the highlights go in exactly the same place. The shadows go in exactly the same place. Yeah, Crows and Bones has a couple good colors. There you go. D. Clearman with the War Master Bronze and Inquisitor Purple, Valandar. I think those are both Sadie colors. I think Sadie did those. Well, the Forster's Favorites is kind of like that. The recent, the Kickstarter that's about to ship. I'll probably do a PDF about it on my Patreon about those colors. That is what that is. Those are me going, okay, what are the most underrated colors that people are not using that they need to use that I use all the time? Like, colors that people tend to not see that I think are very utilitarian. That's what those Forster Favorites are. And that's, it's coming out as a Kickstarter set, so. Yes, Vallejo's are more viscous durum because they use a different base that has a more viscous resin. It's a bigger particulate resin, which is why it gives coverage, but that's also what keeps it from having really good adhesion and durability. It's They are together. Those qualities go like on a balance scale. And surface chemists everywhere regularly try to push the envelope and come up with a resin that has the best qualities of all of them. But given that it's at a, particulate, like microparticulate size is the reason for the problem, I don't know. Honestly, the best purples in MSP, and I don't know if they match Vallejo purples or at all, although I think Runic purple does match the basic Vallejo purple, or it's very close. But Runic, Styx, Monarch, Clear Magenta, and maybe Runic Glow. I use a fairly limited palette of purples that I can then mix everything else from. I mean, I use Imperial too, because Imperial is a little bluer. Yeah, Shadow Raven, exactly. Realistic on a chibi. Durham, I paint realistic NMM on sci-fi and fantasy. Why can't you do realism in sci-fi and fantasy? Why wouldn't you? I mean, a lot of people don't, but I always have liked more realistic takes on minis. Yeah, it is, Lord Nobody. I agree. It is difficult to see. Yeah, it does. It does. That's why I didn't go with that thick goopy vase for Master Series, Durham, actually. Because I was sick. I used mostly Vallejo before I came to Reaper and designed MSP. I think I want a little bit more solid here. Hold on, Walnut. I started with brown liner and realized I didn't want a more subtle line, so I'm going to go to Walnut. But yeah, that was a major reason why the MSP have a more fluid base out the gate, is that you don't need to thin them for hours to get to the consistency you want for thinner paint applications. Because it drove me nuts how long it took me to thin white or any lighter color to the point where I could layer with it, glaze with it. So that's why I went the other way. Hey, Twistedoma. Oh, I missed that, Lord Dave. Me and David coming to ReaperCon. We have our hotel room. We are, it'll depend on where we are with vaccination and, how things look. But we have reserved the hotel room. We have not bought plane tickets. All right, now I'm going to line between these plates of armor. And where there is not a line, I'm going to make one where I perceive there should be one. So I want to, because everything is so small here, my only shading is going to be liner. That's why I started with a slightly darker red, but not a too dark red. I wanted the liner to actually show up. Yeah, they had a distribution problem a while ago, Crows. I'm glad, Durham. Thanks. I'm glad you like it. Oh, I see, Durham. I see on the sci-fi fantasy. See, but you say that, Durham, but I have had people be dead serious about that argument before. Dead serious. There are people in the historical venues that think that you shouldn't paint sci-fi and fantasy realistically. To them, they are two different categories of painting with totally different styles. And, if that floats your boat, go for it. But I don't think that is a hard and fast rule. And it's certainly not an attitude that I would want to spread. With RMM? You mean real metal? That we call it TMM too, true metallic metal. But I mean, did you do shading on them, Belothian? I mean, did you shade in metallics, or did you just paint in metal? Or I don't know what your level is. I have no idea what techniques you tend to use. I mean, usually if you've got metal armor, you either are going, you've got three choices. And that's true metallics. I also called shaded metallics, where you're working with shading and highlighting on your metallic paint. You've got NMM, which is non-metallic metal. and you've got what people used to call demi-metallics, and maybe still do, which is kind of a mixture of both. No, you cannot. No links in the chat, sadly. You could probably get some free opinions on the Reaper Discord. I have a Discord, but that's only for my Patreon peeps. And I do give them ideas and feedback on there. That's part of being a Anne's Patreon peep. But that's patreon.com/paintingbig. But yeah, if you want just pretty much free feedback and advice and suggestions, then you should go to the Reaper Discord. I'm sure there's a place to put up work in progress or finished models. You can put up the finished ones with metal and ask, what more could I do or how could I do different? Usually, though, I mean, if you've got a group of models, you want to do them all in the same style or it's going to look kind of weird. They aren't going to look like they belong together. If you don't care about that and you're just doing it for painting practice, then rock on. Yes. Yeah, there's just that technique where you're going to paint it, what you're going to paint it. I mean, and nobody should care. I mean, it's you. If it makes you happy, it's your model. The only time where you run into problems with that, I speak from experience, is the person who, I just wanted to paint this blue, and then complains that nobody thinks that his blue painted armor is brilliant. Or gets mad because you kind of tell him, well, it's blue armor, you did a pretty good job at blue armor. There are people who want actual feedback, and there are people who just want validation. And as a mini painting instructor, you learn to spot them so that you can give them what they're looking for. There we go. Shadow. Heavy shadow between there. I'm going to go back with black. Yeah, if it's all for the practice, Balafian, then do whatever. I used to really like demi-metallics because it kills the shine on your metallics a little bit, because what you're doing is you're kind of mixing both. You're mixing regular color into metallics, so that means it's going to dull the metallic, but it's still going to give you a little shine. So sometimes it can be cool, and just like with shaded metallics, then you can add regular paints in for shading and get, kind of cool, dramatic, more controlled effects than with standard metallics. But you're going to lose that shine, which is half the point of metallics. So you've got to ask yourself why you're doing it. Hey, Jarrett's Terrain Minis. How is it going? Fantasy hack, yeah. Yeah, I would do that totally. Totally get that fantasy hack on a t-shirt, Korniko. Right, yeah, if you're just seeking validation, you aren't usually going to get much better. You're going to get some better, because as you paint, you're going to get better brush control, and you may just try your own thing at your own speed. That's not a problem. Like if you really need that whole, hey, look, I did a thing, and you want people to be happy you did the thing, awesome. Yeah, if that keeps you painting, rock it. Totally rock it. There was a time in my early art career when I was a kid that was what I needed. I needed validation that I had actually finished a thing to give me the impetus to continue doing things. There is absolutely nothing wrong or bad about that. I'm just getting some of this lining done on here. Again, because it's a chibi and we have such small surfaces to work with, lining is pretty much my shading on this model. So I've got to kind of see how it's bringing out different segments of the armor to put that dark line in there. I'm not using a black right now to line Dr. Bob. I'm using walnut brown and brown liner, kind of a mix. If his nose is so high in the air, he'll never see the t-shirt. Oh, Julie. Yeah, I hate the idea of shiny shadows myself also. That's why I do shaded metallics and use regular paint to shade. Cool, Durham. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that my opinion of people who want validation is just as good as my opinion of people who want to improve. I mean, it's what do you need? What do you need to continue on in the hobby? Whatever you need, we'll give it to you. because we want you to continue on in the hobby no matter who you are. It's going okay today. It's Monday, you know. But it's Monday, and on Friday, Overwatch League is back, and I'm addicted to professional Overwatch. So I am determined to have a good week. Also, I got a lot done over the weekend. Like I said, I worked on my my Sky Earth NMM how-to for my special offer for my Patreon for May. And I'm really happy with how it's shaping up, although it is a lot to digest. So, I mean, it's a really complex topic. It's easier if you already have a very good fundamental understanding of NMM. Owl starts Friday, Evan. Friday! I can't wait! Dallas might not suck this year. Although now I live in San Francisco, so, you know, one of the best teams is my home team. But I still have a soft spot for Dallas and Houston, so I'm totally going to still root for them. Yeah, it is stretch time. Oh, is there any time when you would want to line with a lighter color? Yes, Val, if you're doing something that's glowing. For example, the Eldar avatar from Games Workshop is painted as if it has like metal plates on it, but the interior of the avatar is like glowing white hot. So if you are trying to do that glowing effect coming through between armor plates, that is where you do it. It's the same effect you do for lava, where you want the glowing effect lined between the big stone chunks in a lava river. So that is the only time you'd use a lighter thing, is if when you're doing a glow effect, because otherwise lining is naturally bringing out shadows where two places meet. Like where my fingers meet is a natural shadow, right? And that's what you're doing with lining. So if I was holding a glowing stone in my hand or a glowing bulb, then you would see light coming through here. And that would be when you are using a light color, or most often it should be white and then maybe tinted with another color. Then you would use a light colored line. That's the only time. Thanks for the bump there, Quindy. It's been moving and I've been trying to work. Yeah, I mean, Overwatch does move very fast. They've come a long way, I think, Dr. Bob, with the observer cams. But I mean, I play, so for me, it's easy to follow. Good. Good Lord, Dave. I'm glad I helped. Well, kind of, Dr. Bob. Only depends on, right? Like, if only one spot is glowing, you're only going to use the lighter color in one spot. But, like, say you're doing a Wraith or a Ghost Pirate or something. But Wraiths are the best because, you know, they've got that ghostly and then they've usually got armor. So with a Wraith, the entire body is glowing. So it makes sense that maybe some of that light would leak out between the armor plates so you could get away with there. But you got to think about, because it's not going to necessarily leak through any cloth, right? Because a cloth is big and heavy, and it doesn't necessarily have cracks or holes in it. If it does, then you can do that. But you got to think of it logically. Yeah, lots of chat today, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I'm going to stretch break. But yeah, I'm not using black, I'm using walnut brown and brown liner. I probably should have used black because black is going to be the loincloth there, in which point I'll paint over this again with black. This is one of the only models that I would do a lot of black lining on, possibly because she's a vampire, but I can't get away from my own. I don't like black to line. I find it's really, really cartoony. So even though I'm working on a very cartoony figure, it's hard to break the old habit, if you know what I mean. Ooh, I also need to do her lips, and I'll probably use Asmodeus as a starting point for that as well. So yeah, and the thing with the glowing thing, Val, with lining with a light color is that you're usually not just lining those plates. You usually also have to figure out there's a glow, right? So you're putting a fade where the light is kind of leaking out in between there. So it's not just a hard line, because the light is going to be moving, right? Light does not just sit, it emanates. So again, we're back to realism. Realism in fantasy, right? Stretch, everybody. I say this during my SENMM thing, and I've said it on this stream so many times, But if you are trying to duplicate an effect in nature, it is always advantageous to look at a natural subject. Always look at how it actually looks. Put a little night light behind your hand and see how it looks when the light shines through it. Feedback plus. This stream is great for that, though, because it's not just me. All you guys have your own experiences, and you're not shy in sharing them, and that's always hugely valuable. I think this has got to be one of the most valuable info streams on mini painting on the web. Like, just because we have such a great audience that are also contributing all the things they know, in addition to all the things I know. Yeah, that's true. Hack is a different thing. I have an old t-shirt. I don't know if I still have it because I've outshrunk it. But I used to have a Reaper Paint Crew t-shirt with Hack in giant letters across the back. It was one of my favorite shirts, but yeah, I think it might still be in my old ReaperCon shirts box. But I've lost so much weight, and I'm not planning on stopping, so I got rid of a lot of my old shirts before I moved. So I don't know if that one made it. Let me just do one more stretch and we'll be back. So I learned a great yoga move yesterday. It was evil, and I fell over several times. But it's the one where you put one toe out, and you can touch your toe to the ground or not. So you're balancing mostly on one leg. And you can lift up that toe off the ground if you want. And then you do your opposite arm, right? And then your other arm goes out at an angle, and you go this. And you try not to fall over, and you do it repeatedly. And then you switch sides. Like, that was intense. I was definitely sweating after yoga yesterday. But I'm trying to improve my balance, so that's just crazy move. Like, you have to keep all your muscles strong in your core. Yeah, red liner and walnut works well. Red and brown if you want it more subtle. Ugh, no thanks. I lived through that, Shadow. I don't want to be there anymore. Plus, when you get skinnier, you want to wear clothes that make you look good. And then the 80s never made anybody look good. I know. I was in high school then. Although I do like the leg warmers, I gotta say. I'd be okay with the leg warmers. And I do miss jean jackets. I like jean jackets. Quindy, so true. Funny because it's true. Yeah, that pose, like that's some serious stuff, right? I went splat, like I fell over the first few times I tried to do it along with her on the TV. But now that I know it, now I'm like, ooh, this is a good balance. Like, it's really good to develop balance. And so I'm like, ooh, I like this, you know. I'll do it more. But I'll probably give my back a break for a day before I do it more. Right, exactly, Suru. Yeah, except when I was overweight in high school, I always wore the baggy clothes. In college, I always wore the baggy t-shirt. Always. Up until the point where I just, like, went, enough is enough, and started taking control of my weight. And started really working on losing it. Then I was like, and when I got to the point where I was like, whoa, I can work, I actually have a waist. then it was like, okay. And that was a big motivator. Like, it's still a big motivator for me. Like, I've always wished that I could wear really pretty clothes, and I've just never had the right body shape to, like, look good in the clothes I wanted to look good in. So that's a huge motivator for me to continue to lose weight. It's just like, I want to be able to wear the pretty things that I see and look good in them. What can I say? I'm still female. I might be getting older, but I'm still a girl. Yeah, I had a jean jacket in high school too, Durham. Thanks, Rump. I'm glad you like the liners. Yes, there is extra flow aid in there, not drying retarder, although it's a different base chemically than all the rest of the MSP. So it may dry a little slower just because it's got a different chemical composition. But yeah, lining was the big thing when I was like first getting into professional painting. And I wanted to make a class of paint that enabled that technique because I really enjoy lining. And especially on models with a lot of small details, I feel like it really helps to bring out all those details. So that's why the liners were born, is I went looking for a base that was more fluid. And the other lucky happenstance is that it works really good for priming bones if you want to do like kind of a wash with it, if you cut it with matte medium or brush on sealer. And so it also has that great property of working well for that and just for general underpainting, just like if you're doing like if the canvas technique of using like burnt umber and white to block in your light and shadow behind before you start going over it. With color, you can do the same thing with the liners very, very easily. And I think they work excellently for that. All right, let's get this little foot all figured out here. Foot. And there's a little divot there. Little screw or bolt. Okay. So as we line, all the little details are coming out a lot better. And we haven't even started highlighting yet. Oh, just use them for paint. Too, Durham. I mean, I use blue liner all the time as a regular paint. And brown liner. I mean, mix them with white, mix them with whatever. They are a different paint chemically, but they are still fully compatible mixing with all the rest of our Reaper paint. So, I'm going to actually thin this just a tad. But yeah, so liners are specialty paint if used on their own, but they mix great with other things, including metallics. They're a quick shader, they're a liner, I mix blue liner with white all the time. In fact, I think, didn't we do that with her hair, guys? Wasn't that the blue I used? Usually it is. Because I didn't want to go super blue. So, like, as an example, the blue liner plus white combo, Durham, is it makes a beautiful, beautiful blue. Hold on. So here's our drop of, looks like it's just black blue liner. Then we add some white to it. And now it will turn into a beautiful gray blue. Beautiful. It's a beautiful soft gray blue. I love this color. I love it for highlighting black, most especially. It's my favorite highlight color for black. Hands down. Hands down. So yeah, when you add that other color in there, then especially because you're adding pure white, which has a ton of white pigment in it and a lot of opacity, then you add opacity to the liner and it acts just like a normal paint. So yeah, blue liner especially, although you can also do it with brown. And for gray liner, I use gray liner in my silver and steel NMM, Durham, because the gray liner has the transparency that all liners have. So when you need to do NMM steel and you need to go from almost black to pure white in a very small space, having your dark be translucent naturally so that it's easier to do spot blends with, really important. Like, really makes it a little easier, I think. Because pure black is so very strong. It's such a very, very pervasive paint that you would have to thin it way down and use touches of it. And I find that gray liner is almost as dark enough, and that it works a little bit easier, especially if you're just starting out trying to do steel NMM, steel and silver NMM being very difficult to do because of that almost black to pure white gradient that you are seeking. Alrighty. We need more lining. Lining. We're almost done with our lining, though. We have almost accomplished lining. And I'm using a bigger brush for this as well, which you don't have to. But once I start lining, I usually keep lining a whole bunch of things. So if I used a tiny brush for this, I would be able to be, very precise. but I would also have to reload my brush a lot. And when I'm lining, because I like to just keep going, that's not an advantage. So I want to not have to reload my brush. I want to just be able to go for a nice long time. Without having to wash out and reload. So I find I get more mileage from a slightly larger brush. You don't have to do one that's this big. My Da Vinci Series 10 size 0 or size 1 is also a great brush for lining. Oh yeah, coal black is a teal. This is more blue. Blue liner does use a blue pigment, however, that is a green shade blue. So it does have a slight shift toward the green, which is probably why it looks like coal black to you. Coal black has more green in it, though. I would say that coal black definitely goes with a teal. And you can also use that as a perfectly valid highlight for black. There are a great many colors that can be used to highlight black. And, you know, some of them are going to give you more of a magic and less of a realistic effect, but often that may be what you want. So, and I'm just going to grab some of this and shade around her feet really heavily. I like to take the base and just do a really heavy cast shadow sometimes around the feet of the model. And then when I paint over with the gray or whatever I'm going to do for the stonework, I've got that shadow there to remind me. Plus it makes the base not just gray. I just have a little bit of that black shadow. Yeah, and try both, Lord Nobody. I can tell you I noticed the biggest improvement myself when I was trying to become a better painter was actually in going smaller. But everybody varies, right? Everybody's different. Like, what I found is that in switching to a smaller brush, it forced me to concentrate more on each area of the model, and to pay more attention to small detail. And so I actually got significantly better over like a 3-week period where I was forcing myself to just use a small brush. But if you are trying to master something more like lighting, using a larger brush can probably help you a lot because it'll force you to be broader in your treatment, which is what you want when you're going for a realistic lighting effect. You're not wanting to be micro-focused so much. You're more wanting to look at the big picture and how light falls on the model. So again, your mileage may vary, but switching back and forth between different brush sizes, giving it a few weeks or a month at, you know, trying a much bigger size than you're used to, and then going back and trying smaller, I think there's a great advantage always for experimenting with all different types of materials in your painting. And that includes brushes and brush sizes. Because it's what makes you different, and and somebody else's favorite brush is going to be your least favorite brush, and vice versa. Yeah, the 0 in the Raphael isn't bad, but I really like the 1. I really like the 1 because I find that if I want a middle brush, like I do want a serious difference in the size. Like, my sizes jump greatly because I find that, like, there is definitely a technique for each of these, right? And the 0 would kind of split the difference between these two. But really, it's like, for me, there are specific things I reach for this brush for and specific things I like this brush for. So splitting the difference wouldn't necessarily get me... It would kind of go in the middle of the techniques that I maybe use these for. So again, you know, what works for you is the most important thing in the world. I always use this dog analogy, but we would always tell people that the best food for your dog is the food that your dog really likes that's good for your dog. Like, it can be the best food in the world, but if your dog does not like it, it's not a good food for your dog. And the same thing applies with art supplies and painting in general. All right, let's go back to our brush. Dog advice, Crows and Bones? Is that what you're thanking me for? I'm full of it. Yes, exactly, Fubeka. Yeah, that's the problem with the full belly Raphael, right? Is that you can hold so much paint, you need to unload it like a beast. You need to load it up very gently and then unload, and then you can control it. But once you've got that, you can paint with it forever because you've, got this gigantic well of paint in your brush, right? So again, it's a different style. It's a different, what works for you. There are definitely times where I enjoy painting with Tiny Brush, even though I have to reload Tiny Brush a lot. But it's all my mood at the time, I guess. Oh, you manage a dog food supply store and this is what you tell people all the time? That's right, Crows. Well, I was a breeder for a while, and who knows, in the future I may go back into it because I love my breed, but being dogless right now. But that's what I tell people. That's what I told my puppy people, and it's what we've always told people. It's actually what our breed founder told people. It's it can be the best food in the world, but if your dog doesn't like it, it's the worst food in the world. All right, let's see here. I think I want... Now, I guess I could go black with that because we know it's going to be black. Oh, hey, I think they came to fix our dishwasher. Awesome. I hear a stranger, so either it's an axe murderer or it's a dishwasher repair person. Somebody confirmed that the 28 well palette is not back ordered. Quindy's like, I can't tell, please. So I'm going to block in my blacks. I think I'm going to go... I usually go with... for her pouches, I tend to go brown because it's next to all the black cloth here. And I want to... Oh, is there actually a pouch here? There's pouches underneath this shield. This is going to be really hard to paint. Says in stock. All right. Axe-murdering dishwasher repair person? Could be, right? Could be. But I think I still hear David moving around, so... If he is axe murdered, he's fighting for life right now, and I'm in here painting. I assume I would have heard a blood-curdling scream, though. Or something of the sort. At least a bit of a scuffle. There we go. We're going to have black cloth on this. Yeah. In stock, but will take 10 days to ship. All right. Well, at least it's in stock. So anybody who does want my crazy awesome, little tiny Wells palette because they want to play with it and figure out whether it's for them, go ahead. Would also like to point out that the black, even though I have thinned it, is not at all beating up on this area of the model. So now I'm wondering if it was the Asmodeus that was just kind of having issues where I needed it to go thicker. Because the pure black has a high density pigment color. And so is the Asmodeus, but it's a little bit different. Never know. Blocking in my black cloth. Yeah, there's a little belt pouch up there. We'll end up doing that. The one back there, and that well, we'll end up doing that in brown. There's a tinier one, Shadow Raven. There should be, I think there's a 12. There's one that's, I think there's one that's, just this big. Pearsall, Brian Pearsall, who teaches at ReaperCon, he's got a small one. So they do make smaller ones, with the smaller wells. Well, yeah, all of our paint is made with very similar ingredients, Durham, but we use like 12 different bases. I'm kidding you not. So all of our bases and the type of pigment that we're using is going to vary between the color. I mean, that's why there is a slight difference between Bones and regular MSP, is that the Bones uses a lot more of the high density pigments, just like the old HD line. That's what HD stands for. So you're going to have slight variations. So it could be anything from this side of the model was just harder to coat, or to the fact that the heavy load of high density pigment in the pure black is essentially meaning that it's acting differently with the surface. Could be. Oh, I don't either, Shadow Raven, but there are times where I saran wrap my palette. I just put a little extra water in some of the surrounding wells and saran wrap it and put it aside because I'm going to be painting. If I'm working on the same like competition piece for like 2 or 3 days, I do a saran wrap and then I will slowly use all the wells. Or at least a lot of them. Because you can absolutely do that. I mean, Rhonda uses a damp sponge laid over the top of her wet palette or her well palette to keep it good for like a day. But I just use cling wrap. But same result. Yeah, we're going to do her belt and her belt pouches in brown. So we can get some contrast here because it's all up against the black. I'm going to touch up the hair here. We need to finish the hair. We only did the top because we only had time for the top. But we need to do the rest of it as well. Yeah, that's what David's looks like too, Inara. I mean, I can hit the belt pouch. It's just really hard, like it's so in shadow that it won't get many highlights. It annoys me when there's something like that where it's underneath another area. This is why I normally don't put models together until the last minute, but with Bones they put it together for you, so you're kind of stuck. I think I'm going to go brown with the straps here too, just to give her a little bit more dimension. That's going to be gold. I'm going to line behind this little fastener, which kind of looks like a little skull. And that may be part of her belt, in which case I have mispainted something, but we'll see. I don't think so. It's hard to tell sometimes what things are on TBs. Well, it can be either, right, Durham? Like, you can't, with such a limited sample size, you really can't make a judgment call on it. It could be that part of the model just had heavier mold release on it, or it could be that the different paint is working differently. It could be either. I'm not ready to say conclusively after a single model, but I mean, as I mentioned before, this is the first model I've had beat up on me in years. So I'm unlikely to get another example anytime soon. I noticed another mold line on the sword. No. Hey, we'll be able to do a little bit of NMM on the sword. If I do decide, because the armor is going to be just kind of highlighted the way I want to highlight it, like it is slightly shiny. Gotta get that little bit of plastic off of the sword hilt. All these tiny little plastic removal bits there. And I think we're good there. We're good. And we've got a little bit of mold line back here. There. It's a little bit better. Sweet. Good. Yeah, I never like to make any conclusive judgment calls when I have a sample size of 1. It's too easy to make the wrong one. And then you've got a misconception that you tell other people and then they get the misconception. I mean, that's how like paint myths grow up in our hobby. They do it all the time. If somebody has one thing happen and they make a call on why it happened, then they tell people about it. And even if they say, well, this might be this, somebody's going to glom onto that and say, oh, so-and-so said this was this. You know, because humans, we have black and white brains. We need more colorful brains. No, I don't have it. I always considered it kind of a boring paint, so I didn't get it, Pendrake. Just not my kind of mini. All right, let's block in our brown. Then we'll be all ready to highlight our red for next time, because it's at 11, so we've got 5 minutes because I started almost on time, and that means that we have no time to start highlighting this red. Hold on, Pendrake. Oh yeah. Okay, so I responded. Yeah, the brass bowl is it's a lot of metal. It's a lot of metal. It was never my kind of thing. Just didn't sound fun to me, so I didn't paint one. Though I always thought it looked good in shaded metallics if you were really dramatic with it. But, I mean, there's a far cry, as all of you know, from admiring a paint job on a model by someone else and wanting to paint that model yourself. It does not always follow that you want to go and paint that model yourself. Sometimes, and often maybe, it is inspiring to see somebody else's paint job on a model. But if it's a model that is just not the kind of thing I like to paint in the first place, I'm unlikely to run out and grab it. The problem now is that there are so many beautiful models that I would like to paint. So if I see a pretty sculpt or a pretty paint job on one, I get inspired to run out and grab it. The one thing I didn't get any work done on this weekend was ye old halfling assassin rogue. But I got work done on models to sell on my Patreon for May, so almost finished all the little bits and touch-ups. There we go. So I'm getting the browns all filled in. She's getting a lot more colored, which is nice. I gave eyeballs to Alethea, for example, and she's like a lot closer to done. I finished up her yellow, and I haven't done the freehand on the back or the boots, but otherwise she is very close to done. Need to touch up her base and add probably some little bits of like grass growing out of the soil just below the curb. Yeah, I've seen a couple people do really nice shaded metallic takes on the brass bowl, but nobody's done a crazy verdigris version yet, though. Like with blues and greens in the shadows, even though it's brass, and it should. Monique is definitely wanting to come off of this poster buddy. She is not wanting to stay on. She's as bad as Xandros. Except she doesn't even have the excuse of being metal. He at least has the excuse of being a giant metal slug. And we'll get our little straps right here. And on this side. And then I actually need to put a shadow. I forgot to line back there on that arm. Ah! Why, do you have a brass bowl that you're painting, Pendrake? Yeah, I did forget to line back here. All these little arm plates. Boop. Boop. And then those have to go up here. There we go. Get those little plates lined up there. Now we're ready to do our highlights on our red armor when we next see Monique. And that'll make her start looking really good. Yeah, you do have a herd. Well, then it depends on how fast you want to paint them, right? Because probably the easiest thing then is to go in. I don't even know that I would start with tarnished brass. You guys all know I like to start really pale with my metallics, though. I would be more likely to mix a kind of pale brass color, probably from New Gold with a touch of white and maybe a tiny bit of black or walnut. Go that way and then shade it down and then bring it up for brass. Brass is just colder. And the problem, tarnished brass is a beautiful color and it's good for tarnished brass. But it's, if you're trying to start with a bright brass and then like shade it down, it's not as good for that. Yeah, except that if that model isn't beading like this, then it wouldn't work. Like, that's the problem. You gotta find a model that reacts that way, and then play with it. But you can only try it once, right? Because once you have paint on it, then you're done. You could have a brass bowl that doesn't have a problem with paint sticking to it at all. That's why I say you can't draw conclusions based on, I mean, if anything, you should get a Small World Monique to do it on, because that's what I had a problem with. And then you might find that maybe your Monique doesn't have a problem at all. We'll find out if it's, I've got the Wyvern queued up for tomorrow, and I just washed him yesterday. We're going to be using some reddish browns. I haven't decided otherwise. I should look at some Wyvern art, fantasy Wyvern art. Oh, yes, whoever just asked if this model... Yeah, KS, okay, KS8. Yes, she is a vampire. And yes, she's Monique de Noir. She is a Reaper vampire that has had several iterations. Probably most famousness is Werner's take on her, the 54mm version. But yeah, so she has also been, she's been in the Small World comics for the Kickstarters and stuff like that. So yes, vampire. She plays D&D with Sophie, exactly. So that is her. Let's see. Boop. There. And if I bring in a little bit of white, then her skin tones get a little bit better. But yeah, so there we go. See, there's the paint myth. I did not say that, Pendrake. I said it could be that or many other things. Like, it was a random thought that went through my head, and you chomped on it. And I would like to say no, it could, maybe, but I've never had that particular thing happen. Usually if it's beading, it's beading. So this time, the black went on great. But I can't base something on that, and you certainly shouldn't repeat it to anybody. See, it's like, that's the danger of me trying to, like, troubleshoot anything online, is that somebody's going to hear one part of it and run with it. And then everybody's going to go, what? There are some paints that are worse for bones? No, that's not the point. I really believe that it's the individual model. I really don't believe that it's the paint. I'm pretty sure. Well, he talked in chat, so that means I see it. I see all. But yes. I don't see, although I said that, I really don't see why it should be, because Asmodeus is also built in a high density base. It just has different pigments in it. So, yeah, just I don't want you guys to run with it and talk about it and, and have this turn into a thing, or maybe a thing, right? It may be just I cleaned it all evenly, Anara, so it's far more like, because I don't scrub my bones. I just swoosh them around in hot soapy water or rinse them. So it was cleaned absolutely evenly with the rest of the model. It could be that I had a greasy finger one day and printed it, or it could be just that Yeah, right, Chaos. Exactly. See, you see my point. And there's so many bad paint rumors out there. Like, there are so many paint rumors where people experience something and then talk about it, because to them, it is their reality. They believe it. They believe that this is the thing. But it may not be the thing. And so, you know, I get frustrated. I am very much hey, test it. Don't just eat it up. Test it and see if it works for you or doesn't work for you, right? But yeah. Yeah. So it's okay, Pendrake. Just, you know. Right, but I don't know. Whatever. Do whatever you want. I still feel like, okay, for it to be a true systematic test, Pendrake, you'd have to do 100 models. At least. For a decent sample size. Well, maybe you've got a Bones Kickstarter coming, so you can. But I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I've had primer bead on some Bones models. It's just been a long time, right? Yeah. You didn't clean it good enough? Yeah. But yeah, it's... But yeah, totally. So it's time to go. Do we have a raid, Reaper? But yeah, honestly, if you guys want to test it, test it. I'm just like, I get worried about these things. And that's when I get passionate about it. Because I'm just like, please don't jump to conclusions. Yeah, Scale Modeling World is full of it. Yes, yeah, right? Right? Yeah. All right, have fun, everybody, and I will talk to you later. Adios.